In order to make a comparison between these two conditions, I'm going to look at 7 common difficulties that people with Asperger's are likely to experience and see whether or not schizoids are likely to experience the same kind of thing. It's important to keep in mind that because every person with Asperger's is different, they will experience varying symptoms. And so not all of these 7 difficulties will manifest in the same way for everyone. This is a complex condition that is still being researched in the psychological field, and what I'm presenting is a general overview of the data currently available. Okay, so we'll go over to slide 1. Minimal social interactions, lack of adherence to social rules or norms, avoidance of eye contact. These are traits that can manifest in both conditions but for different reasons. So with Asperger's, they can have strong desires to interact with other people socially, but their social isolation may be minimized due to a lack of social skills, which can make socializing difficult or stressful for them. Also, they can be happy alone pursuing their interests and passions. When Asperger's have difficulty socializing, it can be because it can be hard for them to encode social rules and customs. So for example, they might talk too loudly in the library or push ahead in a queue. For these people, making eye contact can feel unnatural, but this is something that can improve with time. So overall, with the right support and assistance, they've got the potential to develop better social skills and to have more successful interactions with other people. Schizoids, on the other hand, we have less interest in social interactions, mainly because many of us experience social anhedonia, which means that we tend to gain less pleasure from social interactions than other people do, and this affects our level of motivation to socialize. We can understand social rules well enough and follow them well if we want to, but a lot of us value being in our heads, and because of the schizoid defense mechanism that we have in place, we tend to be emotionally detached from the external world. This makes us detached from other people and can make it harder for us to value social norms and customs. So our lack of social interaction isn't necessarily down to a lack of social skills, and so if we don't make eye contact, it's probably because we don't want a social interaction. Okay, so on to number 2. Conversations that almost always revolve around themselves or a certain topic rather than others. It's common for people with Asperger's to have a highly intense interest in particular topics, and this interest can extend to objects in the external world. With Asperger's, they tend to be very detail orientated, and so they can be focused on gathering concrete facts related to their fascinations, which can lead them to construct a highly specialized knowledge base on certain subjects. Because of their special interest, when engaging in conversation with another person, they can become very focused on, passionate, or excited by talking about things that motivate them. This can cause them to dominate conversations, especially if they haven't developed the social skills required to have a balanced conversation. Having a balanced conversation involves learning when to allow the other person to have a turn to speak, not butting in when someone else is talking, and listening to the other person's response after asking them a question. These are social skills that can be potentially developed over time, so it's not necessarily something that is going to be permanently holding someone back with Asperger's. Schizoids, on the other hand, well, we don't really tend to want to engage in social conversations very often. When we do choose to interact with another person in conversation, it's possible that we can get drawn into talking about a topic that interests us. However, having an obsessional interest on a narrow range of subjects isn't part of the schizoid condition. Due to many of us being emotionally detached and experience anhedonia, schizoids, we can have a lack of desire to engage in many activities, and that's activities, especially social activities. However, there's no reason why we can't have a significant range of interest. We are, however, unlikely to focus a conversation on ourselves or talk about ourselves a lot. due to the schizoid defense, mainly due to the schizoid defense that we have in place, because it makes us resistant to sharing interpersonal information with other people. We tend to be very private, and so revolving a conversation around ourselves is not something that we tend to do. On to slide 3. Speech that sounds unusual, such as flat, high-pitched, quiet, loud, or robotic. This is another trait that can potentially manifest in both conditions, but not with everyone. I've already made a video covering this topic, so if you're interested, I've linked it above and also in the description. Slide 4. Difficulty managing emotions, which may lead to verbal or behavioral outbursts or tantrums. It's common for people with Asperger's to experience strong emotions and also have a low tolerance for frustration, and this can mean that they experience irritability or meltdowns. Researchers found that people living with this condition can suffer from emotional flare-ups, and so they can alternate from calm to extreme anger very quickly. There are a number of reasons for this linked to their condition, why this may happen. So I'll just give a brief overview of some of that. This may occur in response to being overwhelmed by their sensory environment. Because people with Asperger's tend to have a sensitivity to external stimuli, in certain situations, things such as sound, lights, touch, smell, or visual stimuli can push them into experience sensory overload. And this can cause stress that triggers off a strong emotional response. Another factor that can contribute to them having a strong emotional response is something like a change in their routine. For example, a train being cancelled or not being able to get their usual seat in class, because they have a strong need for routine, which is an issue that I'll further cover in another slide. The main point here is to highlight that people with Asperger's are liable to have strong emotional expressions. Schizoids, on the other hand, we tend not to express strong emotions. There are a number of reasons for this as well, but one of the main reasons why is that as schizoids, we tend to be emotionally detached from what's taking place around us, and so we're not as likely to have an emotional response to occurrences that are happening in our environment. We do experience emotions within. However, as many of us schizoids have an empty core, which I will be covering in another video, and also many schizoids experience alexithymia. I will link that above if you want to learn more about that. It can be difficult to connect with and read our own emotions. So for us, it can be particularly difficult to express emotions such as anger, and this tends to make us consistently very calm. On to number 5. Not understanding own emotions well or having less facial expressions than others. This is another one that people with both conditions can experience. In the last slide, I've mentioned that schizoid experience alexithymia. Now I wish to highlight that people with Asperger's can also experience alexithymia. Although same as schizoids, this is not necessarily part of their condition, and not everyone with Asperger's experiences this. However, research has found that many people with Asperger's can struggle to relate to their own emotions or read them sufficiently. So you may ask, if both Asperger's and schizoid experience alexithymia, then why don't they both have emotional outbursts? The emotional outbursts in Asperger's are primarily due to the high level of frustration, irritation, and difficulty that they experience in connection to the sensory world around them and being overwhelmed by it. Schizoids, on the other hand, are not subject to these type of sensory difficulties to the same extremities, so they're not going to be triggered into having these kinds of emotional outbursts. On to number 6. Not understanding other people's feelings or perspectives. On this point, Asperger's and schizoids tend to differ from one another. I have to say that when we get into the realms of empathy, this is quite a controversial topic because this really does vary from person to person in both conditions, and the psychological research in this area is somewhat sketchy. However, I will give my opinion on how I see this manifesting. Because Asperger's have difficulty picking up on and reading social cues, this can contribute to their difficulty in understanding other people's perspectives. Additionally, they tend to have specialized fields of interest. This may limit the degree to which their perspective overlaps with the perspective of others, and the degree to which they're able to mentally extend themselves to see where other people are coming from, as well as it can also be harder for them to then put themselves in other people's shoes. For this reason, they tend to lack cognitive empathy. We've already mentioned that people with Asperger's are not good at understanding their own emotions, and this means that they may also struggle to understand the emotions of others. Along with having difficulty encoding social norms, this can make understanding the feelings and perspective of others particularly difficult. I mentioned that many schizoids also have difficulty reading their own emotions because of alexithymia. For some people with this condition, it can mean that they also have difficulty processing the emotions of other people, and being generally emotionally detached from the world around them, this could limit the degree to which they connect with and understand the feelings of others. So some schizoids will tend to lack emotional empathy, similar to the Asperger's. On the other hand, being emotionally detached from the world means that a lot of schizoids lean more strongly towards being very logical and analytical in their thinking. Although schizoids experience a lack of desire to socially interact with people, we can still have a keen interest in understanding other people. Schizoids tend to be high on their motivation for preservation, for self-preservation, self-defense, and self-protection, and this is linked to their need to be safe. For this reason, many of us see learning about other people and how they function to be essential to navigating our way through the world in the safest way possible. Therefore, analyzing and dissecting social norms can help us to accomplish this. Many schizoids are conscious of the fact that we're different from people around us, and this can also motivate us to discover why this is. In my opinion, due to this and many other reasons that I'll go into in future videos, I think that schizoids can be good at having cognitive empathy. This can help us to understand other people's feelings and perspectives. On to number 7. Becoming upset at changes in routines. People who have Asperger's syndrome rely on routine and structure in order to function properly. This gives them a greater sense of certainty and order in the world. Without this, they can become very stressed out because they feel uncertainty and order in the world is breaking down. And they can become very stressed and fearful and anxious about this because they can feel that life is becoming unmanageable for them. The level of structure and routine a person with Asperger's requires varies from person to person. However, this tends to be a key feature of the condition. For schizoids, on the other hand, a need for meticulous structure, organization, or order is not part of the condition. So, as you can see from these 7 common difficulties of Asperger syndrome, there are significant differences between this and Schizoid Personality Disorder. There's more to both conditions than is covered in this video. However, I really wanted to highlight some key differences and points of similarity, and I hope that this was informative.